I'm Anne and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm wrapping up the books that I read in June of 2021. But before we get into that, if I am super echoey, I am sorry. I hope my microphone is making it sound a little bit better, but currently I am in a room that is emptying. So you might be able to see like my empty bookshelf over there and like empty shelves here. Stuff is happening. You know, that's the point. I am painting my room. I am also painting my bathroom today. As you can see, I have remnants of paint on me. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a mess today. This month was a really good reading month. I read 19 books, which is a lot for me. But I also feel like quite a few of those books I read as a result of my Dollar Tree book challenge, which I read 9 books for. The ones that I talked about extensively in my Dollar Tree book video, I will not be talking about much in this video, but I read other books outside of that. So I'm going to talk about them, and I'm going to start with 1 star and go up to 5 stars, as I always do. I only have one star, which is great. It's always great to have one star, and that is something I read for the Dollar Tree book challenge, and that is Silver Stars by Michael Grant. Really didn't like it. It felt too modern for being a historical novel. It's World War II, follows these 3 young women on the front lines in Africa in World War II, and I didn't like it. The next book is The Fatal Throne, The Wives of Henry VIII, Tell All, and again, I gave this 2 stars, so we're on to the 2 stars. There was merit to it, but I just didn't like how these women didn't feel like real people. They just felt like extensions of Henry VIII, like victims of him, as opposed to real complexed women. So yeah, gave it 2 stars, wasn't a huge fan. Next one is Windhaven by George R.R. Martin and Lisa Tuttle. This is a graphic novel version of their novel that came out in the 1970s, also titled Windhaven. And I just really feel like this graphic novel didn't have to exist. The reason I gave it 2 stars instead of 1 is because the art is absolutely beautiful. I can't bash the art, it's wonderful, but the story felt really underdeveloped. The world, there wasn't really much progress to plot or an overarching story. It was okay. The art was beautiful, but the plot and characters were just kind of lackluster. And the last 2-star read I read is The Daughter of Sherlock Holmes by Leonard Goldberg. So, I wanted to like this book. So the plot follows the son of John Watson and the illegitimate daughter of Sherlock Holmes, Joanna Blaylock. And she is the daughter of Sherlock Holmes and Irene Adler, which it makes sense on like a fanfic type idea, because if you didn't know, Irene Adler from the original stories was the only woman or the only person that bested Sherlock Holmes. So he was always impressed with her quick wit and her mind because of that. I don't see them having a romantic relationship according to the original stories, but moving that aside, I just felt like this was a little bit too much of like a fan fiction of Sherlock Holmes. It had all these random inserts of, here, this is like a phrase that Sherlock Holmes said, or like the game is afoot, and it was just so filled with that, and the mystery itself was so lackluster. And one of the great things about Sherlock Holmes is his ability to notice all these little details and be able to tell things from that. And Joanna has the same ability, but I also felt like all the times that she did that, you know, when Sherlock Holmes does it in the original books, you say, oh, I didn't notice that, but that's actually really interesting, like that you were able to do that. Whereas when she did it, I constantly felt like, well, that's a far-fetched that you can tell this from this. With Sherlock Holmes, it goes together, where you're like, oh, he has a tan line right here, so thus he must have recently been married, and you can tell how like dark and light the tan line is, how old it's been since he's taken off. Like, that makes sense, but there were a lot of things that Joanna could tell from people that just did not make any sense. So yeah, I felt like it was a really cheap fan fiction of Sherlock Holmes, and I felt bad about that, but I gave it 2 stars. Now we're moving to the 3-star books, and the first one is Legland by Alex Scarrow. Talked about this more in my Dollar Tree book haul, but it's a really, really great apocalyptic world. The way the apocalypse worked, the disease, how it morphed throughout the book, really loved it. The characters were a little bit bland. Leon, the main character, who's this 16-year-old boy, is really interesting, but a lot of the other characters around him just aren't, and I really hated how they brought in interpersonal, intercommunity drama near the end. Just didn't like it. So 3 stars. The next book is The Luck of the Titanic by Stacey Lee. This is one that I was super excited about. I read Stacey Lee's Outrun the Moon. I wanted to read more books by her. So this plot follows Valera Luck, who is this Chinese from England who decides to sneak on the Titanic where her brother is being transported across the Atlantic because she dreams of being this, I'm gonna say circus performer, but it's like acrobat. That her and her brother used to do, but he kind of dreams of a different future where she really wants to be that circus performer. So most of the book follows the interdrama on the Titanic, her hiding her identity, and then of course, the last fourth of the book deals with the actual tragedy of the Titanic that we all think of. It hits an iceberg and starts sinking. The first, 3/4 of the book, while there were some interesting dynamics in it, interesting characters, I was slightly underwhelmed about how slow the pacing was. There didn't seem to be that much interest, that much drama, that much conflict. I wanted more besides, she's just hiding, and she also wants to catch the attention of this wealthy guy on board who could sign her and her brother on to be his acrobatic act in his show in New York City. So besides that, there wasn't that much interest. It was really interesting to see how people treated the Chinese. During that time, there was the Chinese Exclusion Act, which said Chinese people could not come as immigrants to America. I really liked that dynamic, but it was just way too slow in the middle. The ending did not have me prepared for that twist ending, because the ending, and I won't give away too many spoilers because I feel like you know that the ending of the Titanic is going to be sad because it's the Titanic sinking. People are going to die. I was not expecting that ending, so I really liked the ending and I enjoyed a lot of the aspects, but just the middle and near the beginning, just too slow. The next book is Last Hope Island by Lynn Olson. Again, this is from my Dollar Tree books. So it's a nonfiction about World War II. Interesting, but a little bit too dense unless you're really interested in the details of some of the people that worked behind the scenes in aiding with World War II and aiding in defeating Germany. This was interesting enough. I gave it 3 stars, but it could have been a lot better. The next 3-star read is The Tunnel by Carl Johan Valgren. This is a thriller. Follows this recovering drug addict who tries to figure out why his ex-drug dealer was suspiciously murdered and his girlfriend disappeared. And there's also this heist that this other guy is investigating. Really interesting thriller. I really enjoyed the thriller aspects, but I just didn't care for all the disgusting sexual language. It was a little bit too graphic for my taste. Next book I finished is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. So this book follows these 2 friends, Poppy and Alex, who have been friends since college. So for 10 or 11 years, they have gone on vacation every single year together to all these different destinations. And she is this writer for this travel column. So usually her travel column pays for all their expenses, which is why they can go on these trips that get more and more elaborate each year, because when they were back in college, they couldn't really afford these elaborate trips, so they would take more simpler trips. Then 2 years ago, they had a falling out and they haven't talked since then. Alex's younger brother is getting married on this destination wedding, and Poppy decides to go meet up with him to revive their friendship, is the best way to describe it. And of course, it's mostly a romance. And as the story continues, we kind of go back through all the different vacations they've had and then flip forward to the present day, how they first met, and then all the way to the present. This is a pet peeve I have in most romance novels, is that they tend to have the more insta love, or that after like a week of knowing each other, they're absolutely love. And I'm like, so with Alex and Poppy, because they were friends for 10, 11 years, over a decade, it was great to see that they built this, not only friendship, but this deep love for each other. So I really felt their chemistry, which is something I always seem to complain about in romance novels. However, a lot of the like jump backs to their previous vacations didn't really feel necessary. Some of the decisions that they made were just so bad. I felt like some of the conflict of them not getting together earlier was just added into the book just to increase the conflict of will they, won't they get together. And I really dislike that. It has a cute ending. It was a cute, fun, like beachy read, which was exactly what I was in the mood for when I read this. But I did kind of want a little bit less of filler stuff and a little less of contrived drama. The next book is The Child of the Owl by Lawrence Yep. It follows this young girl, Cassie, who is Chinese American, and she's kind of lost her heritage of Chinese. Her father is a horrible gambling addict and he loses all their money constantly. Her mother is dead and her father ends up having to go on the run because he owes all this money, and she ends up being sent to at first live with her uncle, and she ends up moving in with her grandmother. As you can see on the front cover, it's written for middle graders, so it's slightly younger, and Cassie herself is 12 in this book. It's cool to see her live in Chinatown with her grandmother. She kind of learns more about the Chinese culture from her grandmother that has been lost by her father's generation, both her father and uncle, and she makes friends with people and she has troubles and she overcomes them. It's a very cute book and I really enjoyed it. There were things that I was like, did you have to add this? But yeah, it was fun. The next book is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. This is the second book I read by Christina Lauren. I read In a Holidays in January, and while I enjoyed it, I think I gave it 3 stars too. I didn't like the romance all that much, and some of the weaknesses in that book I also saw in this book. But the main plot of this book, it follows this single mom, Jess. She got pregnant with her daughter 6-7 years ago, and her boyfriend at the time abandoned her before her daughter was even born. So she's kind of been on her own since. She has a pretty horrible mother and she was raised mostly by her grandparents. She's friends with this romance novelist who they learn about this new thing, the soulmate equation, this new matchmaking company that has claimed that they can take your DNA and match you with people. And there's different types of compatibility scores. So like, for example, diamond match would be between like 90 and 100%, I think, where like you are soulmates. But 40 to 50%, it means you're like compatible, but maybe for more of the short term, not long term. So both Jess and her friend sign up for this thing, and Jess gets matched with this guy that she's run into once in a while, and he's actually the lead scientist, or one of the lead scientists in this new dating matchmaking company, and his name is River. They are compatible 98%, which is the highest they've ever had. I think the second highest was this old couple that were like 92%, and they'd been married for like 40 some years or whatever. And so River and Jess agree to kind of fake date to see if they're compatible. And of course, the company is using this as a promotion for them finally launching to mass audiences. And of course, romance ensues. And the things I liked about this book is the same things I liked about In a Holidays, is the family and the relationships between friends and grandparents and kids and adults is just really sweet. I really liked that. The romance in the beginning, I really enjoyed River and Jess kind of getting to know each other and realizing they had prejudices against the other, especially Jess against River. But I also really hated how, and and this is something that I see in so many modern romances, which I really dislike, that is Jess kept objectifying River. Like she would notice all these things about like his muscles and like how she kind of wanted to go to bed with him and like all these different things. And I'm like, girlfriend, I understand that like this is something that if you're attracted to someone, you think about, but I don't care to read about that all the time in a romance novel. Okay, let's just move on. I get it. You're attracted to him. You don't need to keep reminding me of that. I also felt like River could have been more developed. Besides, like, he's shy, he was kind of just a perfect guy. Honestly, like, too perfect. And I wanted to learn more about his weaknesses, his insecurities, whereas with Jess, she's so well developed. So I wanted the same for him. But I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. The next book, and I hope I can get the title right, is The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. So this is about a young boy who grew up on Spokane Indian Reservation, and he is really struggling in school. The schools are really not that good, so he decides to transfer to a white school that is outside of the reservation. And it's kind of about his life and understanding how different the cultures are like. He deals with some discrimination. It does talk about a lot of the issues in modern Indian or Native American reservations. We're taught in history class, especially nowadays, how horrible the Indians were treated back, 100, 200, 300 plus years ago. But we aren't really taught anything about like how modern Indian lives are now. Because let's face it, you and I, we didn't live 200 years ago, so we can't change what happened in the past. But we can change what is happening now with the horrible poverty rates that are happening in reservations. And I really enjoyed how this book brought a very childlike perspective on poverty, and he also deals with intense discrimination because he's decided to go to a white school. So a lot of the Indians in the reservations look at him as a traitor. So it's a really, really interesting story, especially since the author actually grew up on the reservation, and I'm not sure how much of this story comes from Alexie's real life. The reason I gave it 3 stars as opposed to higher is just because there's a lot of like sexual language, talking about like adult entertainment and things like that. I'm just not interested in reading about that. And then like him sexualizing different women or girls he meets. I just didn't like that. It was an interesting book where it came to portraying life on modern Indian reservations, but where it came to like the actual characters, I didn't like it all that much. Finally, we're to the last 3 star. I'm sorry, guys. I read a lot of books this month. So the last book is The Woman in the Window by a.j.finn. I'm not going to go into all the weird controversy surrounding this book and surrounding the author. This is his debut novel. And there is a movie starring Amy Adams that came out on Netflix, I don't know, last year? Or was it this year? I don't remember, but I have not seen the movie. So the plot of this book follows this woman who has this disease and she cannot go outside. So she lives inside this little house and she just watches the neighbors like a weirdo. And she ends up meeting the wife next door, and then she sees the wife stabbed and dying, and she calls the police, and when they get there, they're like, yeah, no one was hurt in the house, and the wife next door wasn't even there when you claimed she was. And then they bring in the wife, and she's a completely different woman than Anna, the main character, has met before. So there's that. But Anna is a psychologist, and she is on medication, but she's also a heavy alcoholic, and the medication combined with the alcohol may give you hallucinations. So the police kind of dismiss her, and she kind of starts to investigate herself because she doesn't believe she just hallucinated it. Without giving away any spoilers, that's about the basics of the book. I'm pretty sure that Anna is introduced to us as being a unreliable narrator, but I just think I've read a few books with unreliable narrators and they can be done really, really well. But I feel like she was not done well at all. The mystery itself, really interesting. The twist about her family, which I won't go into, really great, but the twist about the like murder was kind of just like, okay, really, that's all? But Anna herself, I think, is what really pulls this book down. Anna is such an annoying protagonist. She clearly sees that she's in danger, and she just keeps drinking though. She keeps seeing that her drinking is a problem and she doesn't do anything about it. She's very unlikable. But then I also feel like for an unreliable narrator, the best thing about an unreliable narrator is that you never quite know where they stand. You're not sure if, are they good? Are they bad? But with Anna, it's clear that she's seeing these things. It's not hallucinations. And everybody just seems to be against her for no reason, which didn't make sense to me. Like the police, everyone just like always sides against her, and it just makes no sense. I just felt like the unreliable narrator was kind of forced on her as opposed to her actually being an unreliable narrator. So 3 stars, not great, but the thriller was really interesting. Okay, next book is American Girls by Alison Umminger. This is about this young girl, this young teenager who runs away to LA to live with her half-sister for a while, and she ends up getting drawn into the Hollywood scene and also researching the Manson murders. So I read this for my Dollar Tree book haul, and it was good. I really enjoyed it. 4 stars. We're on to 4 stars, by the way. I should have mentioned that before. Even though I won't say that they're good characters, they're all kind of selfish, horrible people, but I really enjoyed their development and how we saw the world of LA, and it was all really good. The next 4 star is The Man Who Invented Christmas by Les Stranford. This is a nonfiction that tells the story of Charles Dickens and how he came to write The Christmas Carol. I really loved this book. It also has The Christmas Carol in it, but I didn't read it. I read it for my Dollar Tree book haul again, and it was good. I really enjoyed the nonfiction elements of understanding Charles Dickens, understanding the publishing industry during that time, and also understanding how the world was, how society was formed during the 1840s around that time. So really enjoyable. I really liked it. So the next book is The Shining by Stephen King. I'm so glad I finally got to read this because I've tried to start it 2 times and it starts out kind of slow, and I always ended up DNFing it because it was just so slow. So it follows Jack Torrance, who is this struggling author who takes his family over the winter to live as caretakers at the Overlook Hotel. And the Overlook is possessed. That's the best way to describe it. It's a horror book. It's great. It started out really slow, and I would have enjoyed it if it was more condensed. I think it could have been 300 pages and not lost anything, but I also understand the whole point of following Jack was his descent into madness, and also understanding Danny, his son, more and his ability. He has the shine, or he has these magical powers, pretty much. I felt bad about the ending because I wanted it to have a happier ending, but it is Stephen King, so what do you expect? Do you expect a happy ending? I don't. It was a great book. I'm glad to have finally read it because I've been wanting to read this book for years. I need to read more of Stephen King's, but his long lengths just really intimidate me. The next book I read was Becoming Mrs. Lewis by Patty Callahan. This book follows Joy Davidman, who was this woman who married C.S. Lewis. Yes, C.S. Lewis, the author of The Chronicles of Narnia, a lot of Christian books like The Great Divorce and The Screwtape Letters, and I have loved him since I was a child. I mean, I grew up from age 6 and above reading The Chronicles of Narnia, and I will say I knew a little bit about his marriage and relationship with Joy, but I didn't know that much about her, so it was interesting to read this book to understand. Even though it is a fiction book, it was vastly based on real life, and I really enjoyed that. It pretty much follows Joy's life from beginning to write to C.S. Lewis. She was an author, and she was an American author, and she became friends with C.S. Lewis through writing, and she ended up converting to Christianity, so they would have these long letters, and in the meantime she is married to a pretty abusive man. He would cheat on her frequently. He would abandon them and her 2 sons randomly. He was pretty bad. He was pretty horrible. He drank a lot, and she ends up taking a vacation to England, and meeting C.S. Lewis and kind of falling in love with him, but he more looks at her as a academic equal as well as a close friend, but he doesn't see her in a romantic light. She ends up going back to America, finding out that her husband is leaving her for her cousin, and so Joy ends up divorcing her husband and taking her 2 sons back to England. It is there that she is diagnosed with a horrible cancer, and at this time C.S. Lewis realizes he is in love with her. They ended up getting married. 4 years later, she passed away from cancer, and then 3-4 more years after that, C.S. Lewis passed away. So it's a very sweet, cute romance, even if it has a bittersweet ending. The only reason I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 is because the ending 4 years between when they get married to their death, it's kind of glossed over. But besides that, it was a really beautiful book, and I highly recommend it if you like C.S. Lewis. The next book I read is a really short book, and it's called Skellig by David Almond, and it follows this young boy whose sister is baby sister. She's newly born. She's having horrible heart issues. She's in and out of the hospital. They don't know if she's gonna live, and Michael, the protagonist, the young boy, he ends up meeting this possibly homeless man in his back garden, and he also makes friends with this very unique homeschooled girl in the neighborhood named Mina, and the homeless man living in the garage is called Skellig. That is his name. It's a very cute story. You see Michael really struggling with not being sure if his baby sister will live or not. And you see his parents struggling. You see him struggling in school, and also seeing the comparison with Mina, who's homeschooled, and him. And it's really interesting that the positive way that homeschooling is presented in the book, because I was homeschooled, and I feel like a lot of teachers have a very negative view of homeschooling. The way that Mina is so informed about so many things that an average elementary, middle school student wouldn't be. I really appreciated that, because I was like that too when I was that age, and I found that most kids my age weren't interested in reading old literature and trying to understand the world in a deeper way. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the more magical elements. I'm not sure if you would count this book as magical realism, but it's a little bit like that. It's never explained what exactly Skellig is, but yeah, there's a happy ending. It's very cute. It's a short book. And last but not least is the first book of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, called The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. I'm pretty sure everybody knows this book. I have never actually read it, technically. I have listened to it on audiobook several times, but I just found myself not really enjoying it quite as much. But then I read this version, and this is the 100th anniversary edition. I got it from the library. Speaking of which, my library is finally open, which I'm so happy about. And yeah, so I actually went to the library a week or 2 ago, and I'm so happy. But just the art, just everything. The art makes the story so much more meaningful. It's just such a fun book. I gave this 5 stars because it's such a unique book. In fact, after I read this, I was just so enthralled with it because it's so magical and quirky and kind of darker than the movie. I actually found on my Kindle at Amazon the entire series, all 14 books, I believe 13 full books and maybe 1 short story that Baum wrote for this series, all on Amazon Kindle for 99 cents. So I bought that, but it was only 99 cents for like 14 books. So I'm like, you can't beat that. And they have illustrations like you see in here. So really excited to just like binge read all of them, which I may be doing next month. We will see. That's all the books that I read this month. I feel like I've been talking forever. My throat is sore. I don't know where I have found this energy this summer to like paint my room, and I've been moving everything around. Right now I'm taking down wallpaper. Oh, it's just so much. So busy. But we'll see if I can read as many books as I did this month. I read quite a few books this month. 19. I can't believe I read 19 books. So, have you read any of these books? Just let me know your thoughts. Any thoughts down in the comments. Also, I have noticed recently I am like on 194 subscribers as of when I'm filming this video, which is amazing. Thank you so much for almost 200 subscribers. I can't believe how quick my channel is growing, or quick for what my expectations were. So thank you everybody so much for watching and subscribing and continuing to watch. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. I post every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and I will see you then. Bye.